Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video we're going to have a quick discussion about what is preventing you from getting your first forge weld. So I hope this will be an informative video for you, and I hope you'll watch it all the way through to the end. So I'm going to diagnose some of the most common problems that I see guys doing when they are trying to get forge welds. Now this is on YouTube, this is in person, this is at club meetings, this is just about anywhere. Facebook, people having problems showing that they burn a piece up, they don't know why it didn't weld or didn't take. They tried to weld it 15, 20 different times and it still didn't stick. And so that's what this video is about, is to try to help you all with some of these issues. So number one of the biggest reasons why people don't get welds is you simply have not gotten your piece hot enough. That looks hot, but if I put it together, it won't stick, it won't weld. If your piece will not stick in the fire together, it will not weld out here on the anvil together. So again, I'll say that again. If the piece to be welded will not stick in the fire together, it is not at the right temperature in order for it to be welded. The next section, the next problem that I see people having with welding, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on. The next thing I see people have a problem with welding is they have tried to weld a piece too much and they did not upset enough mass into the bars to start with. So you need to take and upset some mass before you scarf for your welds if you are not comfortable with welding. Now I'll do welds without upsetting enough mass, and sometimes again I pull it off without a trick because I'm fairly skilled at welding, at least doing fire welding, and at other times I do not set up enough mass and therefore I pay the price where I thin it down too much, and then I got to do a bunch of monkeying around to get some thickness back in the joint. The next point that people do when welding is they get the piece too hot. This is not an indication of a good welding heat. Yes, can you weld it at that? Yes, you can. It is hot. But what you have created here is you've created a pimply surface of burnt steel, oxygenated, over-oxygenated steel, and it will not weld. Sparkling is not a good indicator of a welding heat to be obtained. In fact, the only thing that sparkling heat is an indicator of is that you have too much oxygen in your fire bot, and that is what is burning your material. So do not do that. The third part that people have problems with welding is that the pieces are dirty. That means you've burnt it so many times to a crisp that it has high levels of scale on it, and you can't bring it out and get it to weld because of those big pimply blisters there of iron that is no good now. So do not bring your piece up too hot. The third problem is getting distracted. This is going in the background and I'm paying attention to the computer, to the video monitor screen here, and not paying attention to what my metal is doing. You need to turn off radios in the shop. You need to take and pay attention to what you're doing. If you've got a loudmouth friend hanging out around you at that time, you need to go, hushy, I need to get this weld to stick, and then you need to take and pull it out. This will bring me to my next one here, is timing. Now this is going to sound real negative, but I'm trying to take and help you guys the best way I know how. So this piece, it's good and hot, it's at the point where it could weld, but then you bring it out of the piece, it's sparkling, you take your time, you set it on one another, you take your time, you grab your hammer, you give it a whack, and it doesn't weld. Why didn't it weld? You took too long to get the piece from the fire to the anvil. That is the easiest answer there. In 99.999%, everything else I've previously mentioned adds up into that 0.01%. 99% of the time of why a weld doesn't take is because of timing. The time from the fire to the anvil face. You let it take too much time to get to that welding heat, to get and make the weld. So you want to be very time conscious when you're doing welds. So then one of the last things I will say that affects this is oxygen in the fire. If you have too much oxygen in the fire, you will build a ton of scale up on the pieces to be welded, and they just simply won't weld. It doesn't matter how hard you whack them or anything else, you've got a ton of scale on it, they're just not going to want to weld. And now I've burnt these pieces twice, and it's going to be hard pressed to get these pieces to weld now because they've been burnt twice. What they really need to do is they need to be ground off clean again and re-prepped, redressed for welding. Or just start over with new pieces. That's not always the case. You can't always do that in a project, but they're at that point now that they might just not weld. So I'm going to have to bring them up to a near sparkling heat to blow all that scale and crud out from between the weld. So here we go. We're going to come out here. These are up to temp. And they still won't weld. So again, doesn't matter how hard I hit that, the pieces have now went too far with a heavy scale on them for them to work very nicely together. Sometimes you can get away and get that good heavy scale off if you brush like this in between heats to get the good hard scale off. Go ahead and get that brushed off, and then return that close to the fire, let it set on top and heat up, while you go ahead and get this other piece, same way. Take that heavy scale off. Again, it just kind of plasters itself, it gets all blistered on there, and it's just not going to make a very good weld, or an attractive weld at that once you get it done. And so this is my final point about forge welds. Diagnosing forge welds and why you're having troubles with them is too much flux. You take flux and you just dump it on the piece, and you put it on so liberally, it's not even funny, okay? You just drown the piece in flux. What that will do for you is that flux will get between your welding planes, and if you don't hit it good enough to get all that flux out, which most of people don't, we're trying to hit it lightly to get it to weld. If you can't get it to the flux between the welding planes, now you're in trouble. It'll trap it and it'll blow apart the weld every time. And I was able to get that to weld, but we'll stick that back in. But again, I wouldn't trust my life to that weld right there. It would have been better to bring it to a much better heat and temperature the first time and not have all the burning like we've had to this piece. We've had a lot of burning on this piece, which is not good. That weakens that material. The grain growth in that material is not good. And so we're going to have to do a lot of careful forging now just to end up with something that we could have started with in the first place. So once this thing's up to another good welding heat, if you see I only took like 2 or 3 whacks on it and then I quit, and now I'm going to weld it up again another heat or 2. That is so this way I can preserve the structural integrity of that weld as I'm welding this down. But again, I would not trust myself to this piece because that piece now has had a chance to get overscaled, over-oxygenated. It may be together, but again, I wouldn't trust my life to it. So that's just some things that I see beginners make all the time. I have 2 videos that I'll be putting up on the screen now because you've made it here to the end of the video. There is 2 videos where I demonstrate this quite clearly because I got distracted by the camera, paying attention to you all talking and explaining, and I wasn't paying attention to my pieces, and I pulled them out at the wrong time. I took too long at the anvil to get them stuck, the seconds and whatnot, and then they didn't work out for me. And it's clear in the video. It looks horrible. It looks absolutely paltry in the video to me, but you guys can go and check that out at your earliest convenience or at your leisure. So anyways, that's for today. Let me know if any of this advice helped you. Again, this wasn't to be a rant or anything like that. I'm just trying to make it very clear of what the common mistakes are in welding. And then if you go out to your own shop and you correct these mistakes in your shop, I guarantee you, you'll start welding in no time flat. Really complex things that you would have never thought that you had been able to do in the first place. And you'll be able to impress all your friends. That's always good. So anyways, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, God bless you. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.